this is the first official opening of a parliament in this particular location, because the last one was held at the Trade Center, where they would have been sitting since after Ivan, you know. So it is indeed a historical occasion as well in itself. You know, whenever we move into a new era and a new time, we can consider that as historical. What do you think?
Well, most definitely, Shoma. But I always like to quiz you. Yeah, you know that. Shoma, if I don't, our camera people will probably take a shot of it for us. But looking at the seat and arrangements down there, there are two flags, one to the right and one to the left of the speaker. The one to the right of the speaker is the national flag, correct? The one to the left, what flag is that?
That is the Governor General's.
You smart girl.
Andre, I went to school. Yes, once she is due to deliver her speech,
Yes.
it's there. I think there's a particular name for it. It's not called a flag. And of course, once today is finished, that will be removed when the Prime Minister delivers his budget speech. You'll see another Grenada flag on that space. So once the Governor General is in the house, that has to be there.
And as we gaze upon the residents of the house, we can see already here Gabriel, who is a parliamentary representative for the constituency of St. John, Oliver Joseph, constituency of St. David, Kate Lewis, constituency of St. Andrews Northeast, and seated next to her is, who's that? Is that Emmeline Pear?
I do believe it is, yes. She's sort of not in a visual at this time.
Because of her pretty hat.
The hats, the fascinators, and they always a fashion statement that is made by the ladies of the house. There's also Honorable Nicholas Steele, there, Delma Thomas, Anthony Boatswain, or Bosun, whichever way you wish to pronounce it.
That depends on where you're coming from. It's like Rowley and Rowley.
That's right. we see the senior parliamentarian Gregory Bowen,
the leader of government business.
Leader of government business, and a few senators as well. We can see from this vantage point, Senator Nolan Cox, who was actually the first parliamentarian to enter the House this morning.
But Anthony Wilson would have won that.
Oh yeah, okay.
Anthony Wilson would have won that.
I don't know if he had entered the House, but he was here.
Yeah, Anthony Wilson.
And we see Senator Galway is there as well, Senator Judd Cadet, and the young man, I can't really see him from here.
I'm not really making out, can't see his, from my vantage point.
We have a block in front of us here. The cab sec.
Andrew Lewis is here.
Andrew Lewis is here.
Yes, Andrew Lewis is here.
The cab sec is here as well, Mrs. Isaac. She's already there, seated in her position. And it's just a matter of time before we see the military parade or the police parade that will take place in the outer court. And there we have Yolan Bain Hosford, Honorable Yolan Bain Hosford entering. I can hear the faint sound
of drums?
Of the drums of the Royal Grenada Police Force. The sound of distant drums in the background. In the outer court, the procession will take place. The Governor General will arrive, and of course she will inspect her Royal Grenada Police Force. You heard the name, Royal Grenada Police Force, before she enters the house. So that's going to be the proceeding. We will take you through it as we progress here this morning. And Andre, one of the things that really intrigued me is the whole concept of the mace, and understanding when the mace is there and when it's removed. Are you aware of that little procedure that takes place?
Well, the mace always has to be, it enters the house together with the Speaker of the House. And if the Speaker of the House is not in the house, the mace cannot be in the house. As a matter of fact, one of the times, Shoma, when I was doing youth parliament in St. Lucia, and the Deputy Speaker of the House did tell us that one time a member of the opposition took the mace and threw it out of the window, and there was a car waiting to pick it up.
Okay.
And the car picked it up and drove off with it. And they could not have had Parliament that they couldn't
for
pass
a very long time.
For a very long time until they had to do it, because they never got it back based on my math. They never got it back. So they had to get another
new one
and do whatever to, what you may call, sanction it or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. So if the mace is not there, then nothing happens in the House, really.
Yeah, it rarely reflects that the House is sitting.
Mm-hmm.
If there is some sort of recess or something that is not, maybe there's a discussion that is not the House, I think they have a way of dealing with that, you will see that the mace is removed. Mm-hmm. It means that the House is not sitting at the time, you know. And Andrew, I think it is an excellent opportunity for young ones to experience the sitting of Parliament so they get an understanding as to the procedure that takes place. Now, Parliament is one of our areas that persons have been speaking on during the last referendum, mm-hmm. and speaking about the procedures and the wearing of the wig and so on and so forth, and seeing that as having some allegiance to Her Majesty. Well, you know, we are a Commonwealth country, and there are a number of things that we still have as part of our making that is, of course, aligned to the monarchy in England, mm-hmm. and it takes a gradual process to get there.
It most definitely, Shoma. No child is born and starts to walk at the same time.
Exactly.
You have to be a toddler. You have to creep. You have to make mm-hmm. your staggering steps, that you call it, and you grow older with this thing. So one has to understand, as I said, that it takes a process, and sometimes we are not satisfied with the speed of processes. We want these things to happen faster than they are happening, and I could understand that. Understanding that the younger the population gets, Shoma, the faster they would want to see things happen. And that is something that I wouldn't say quick fix is a kind of bad word. So I wouldn't really say quick fix. It's just that the younger they are, they want things to happen faster. While you and I may say, okay, fine, we can wait a week or 2 weeks for something to happen, mm-hmm. They would say, you know what, I am waiting for a week, I am waiting for two weeks, this has to happen now. Tomorrow morning it has to happen now. There's nothing that's going to stop it from happening now. It's like Eric Gary, Shoma, I remember Winston said to me, Eric Gary once made a statement to, I think he's Minister of Finance at one point in time.
Andre, if I may interrupt you here, I'm hearing an order being issued. I'm not sure if it's we have the
could have been outside.
The outside, which we can pick up.
Oh, we got it now.
We've got it?
Yes, we've got it now.
The proceeding is taking place with the Royal Grenada Police Force troops, and a number of contingents are there this morning, as per usual. And it's just a matter of time before the Governor General will arrive mm-hmm. to inspect her troops.
Well, what we're seeing in our picture here is the members of the Special Services Unit. I'm trying to, we were not given information as to the command of the troops there at this particular point in time, but the troops from the Special Services mm-hmm. Unit. And
they usually have a contingent from each of the units represented, including the prison. We're not sure exactly if they're all here this morning. However, what we're seeing, as you referred to, the special unit, and quite frankly, a lot of folks do not recall them in that particular uniform, because they're usually seen in the camouflage uniforms. But we know that they're there, and they're going to be doing their parade in this parade square, as it is called. They would have marched up from the entrance. Before, Andre, you would have them marching up the Church Street area.
Yes.
Going up to Parliament House.
I remember seeing that as a kid.
Yes. And prior to that, you would have had them marching down the trade center, making that roadway down to the trade center. We are top of a promontory or a hill, and you know, it happened that they would have had a shorter distance today.
Well, they should have had. And just to give folks an idea, Shoma, here of who are expected to be in the House today, of course, the Honorable Speaker of the House, Honorable Michael Pierre, and Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, PC, MP for the St. George's North West constituency. Of course, he's Prime Minister, Minister of National Security, Public Administration.
If I may, Andre, sometimes we do interrupt the Commissioner of Police is taking his salute.
Okay.
Join in.
And one can say, Shoma,
no.
Guard of honor, standard is.
Well, Andre, that was our Commissioner of Police recently.
Edwin Martin,
Acting Commissioner
his
of
first
Police.
salute. His first
Actually,
official
his
salute
first
like that.
official
Yes.
salute to Parliament, and together with ACP Prince, accompanied by ACP Prince.
Jessamine Prince?
Jessamine Prince.
St. Patrick's.
Oh my goodness, you want to.
St. Patrick's.
But, you know, the Guard of Honor, and that is by the Royal Grenada Police Force. They are in the Parliament yard. They've taken up their position. It is taking place as we speak. And once we've seen the Governor General arrives and takes a salute, etc., Inspector Troops, she would then head into the inner chamber and enter the house from where her flag is situated, coming into the house. Previously, it would be the front door, but
Yeah.
she's coming out from the inner chamber there this morning. And there are a number of persons, senators and members of the House of Representatives. They're already here. You have the former Governor General, former Prime Minister, or former Governors General, if more than one of them are here. Usually, Sir Daniel is the one who's...
He's always in the
Yes,
nick of
Sir
things.
Glean isn't that well, so it would be nice to have him, but unfortunately. Former Prime Ministers, I know that former Prime Minister Tillman Thomas is usually here in the House, and former presidents of the Speaker and from the House and the Senate as well. The Pusean judges will be here, and the Bishop of St. George. And those are the persons that normally would enter the House. So it's quite an interesting view from up here, folks. We're seeing that all of the parliamentarians, all of the ministers, the representatives are seated at this time.
Save the Prime Minister.
Well, of course, the
Yeah.
Prime Minister enters
Yeah.
specially. Well, there are some senators who are missing. We're not sure whether they will be attending. Some may be out on business and, you know,
Already
other
here.
matters.
Already here we have Senator Garway is here, Senator Nolan Cox is here, Senator Judd Cadet is also here, and I think I'm trying to make out that figure. He has his. Is that?
Well, a number of
Kerry,
them.
is that Kerry?
No, Karen is not
no.
here as yet.
I'm trying to figure out who is that gentleman down there.
Well, there can only be. It's just that it's such a cornered position that
Yeah.
it's difficult to pick up on him at this time. But certainly we'll let you know who is the other senator that is seated in the House.
And at this time, Shoma, really and truly, the senators should have all been seated once they're in the country. They should have been seated by this time.
Well, Andre Lewis we saw a few minutes ago,
he's
but
he's probably here, but seated in an area where we can't, the cameras can't pick him up.
I believe it is the redhead. Livingston Redhead. Yes, that's
in there.
I just seen the top of his head. So forgive us for not being able to identify him at this particular time. And of course, Andre, we're still seeing folks entering the House. They are sitting at the top level. And just a matter of time before I believe we'll see quite a turnout here this morning. The Governor General will deliver that speech, and we have to listen attentively, Andre, because it's important that we understand the significance and the good things to come in 2019. As we speak, another parliamentarian has just entered, Honorable Clarice Modeste, making her way to her seat. And Andre, I asked you the question earlier on about the positioning of the parliamentarians here in the House, and we can see the nameplate. So it tells you that they know exactly where they're to be seated.
Well, I believe too that they are in a position of seniority somewhat. It gives me that kind of a feeling because
Andre, we have Senator Dialli.
Yes, he just arrived. Peter Davis has just arrived too.
Yes.
But the way I'm looking at things here in seniority, you have the only 2 seats remaining that we can see, or the only one now would be Dr. Mitchell. He'll be seated right at the top there, right?
Yes.
And then you have Parliamentary Representative Gregory Boyne, who is next, and next Parliamentary Representative Clarice Charles.
Clarice Charles.
Clarice Modeste, sorry.
Well, let's say good morning
to hear her name. I know she's listening.
Ambassador
good morning,
Charles
Ambassador
out there
Charles.
in Cuba and Arthur. You know, your name will always be called, you know that. A very special lady indeed, if I may digress a little bit, Andre.
Yes, wonderful
and you know, people may say, Sherma, are you crazy? But I always said to her, you know, you will make an excellent prime minister. I dreamt of her being the first female prime minister in Grenada, but she got out of politics in the front line, you know, and I felt a little bit let down, strangely enough.
Well, she isn't dead.
No, she isn't, but you know, you never know. As long as you're alive, things can happen.
She's still vibrant. She isn't dead.
You know,
and we continue to see different PSs coming into the chamber or into the House. We just seen the arrival of Permanent Secretary in the Ministry for Education, Finley Jeffrey. Folks might understand me more if I say scholar.
And then a number of them there, Iran Francois, Elvis Moraine, Mrs. Jessime, RPS in my ministry, Mr. Andel, and a host of others.
You know what is interesting? What is interesting today, Shoma, is that when you look at the PSs, you see such young, fresh persons that before, when you went to the ministry and you had to see the PS, you were almost guaranteed that you saw somebody, and all due respect to all the PSs then, that you saw somebody coming out kind of, limping.
Limping?
Yeah.
Well, you're rather right to say due respect. And that is obvious, Andre, because you remember, once you become a PS, it is like the echelon, the top of the service there. And you would remain there because once you're a PS, you're a PS. So you're talking about a number of PSs, if I'm subject to correction, PSs, who would have retired recently.
Yeah.
So it is the younger person's succession to take place, and hence the reason why we have a cadre of pretty young, relatively young, in their 40s, probably late 30s, and this augurs well for the transition of the operation of government, handing over to persons who can take that baton into the next, 15 years, 10 to 15 years.
Well, if you look at someone like Scholar, who's probably in his 40s thereabout, you would look at another 20 years if he stays another 20 years in the service.
And then your daughter would go into the ministry and come out saying, MPS an old man. So, you know, we understand that. Obviously, Andre, when I would have been a younger person, these persons weren't really looking old to me. But as time passes on, you know, I was young once, and so were you.
Oh, we didn't get to be PSs, did we?
Well, Andre, no, well, you know, we all have our different things to do. The Prime Minister will arrive in the yard, and he is accorded a general salute as well from the troops. We'll see that happening, you know, and you know that everyone must be in the house before the Governor General arrives. I hear a signal of a police outrider. It is possible that is the Prime Minister. And yes, here he comes, as we can see the vehicles out there in the yard, the arrival of the Prime Minister. And this is indeed a special moment for the Prime Minister.
Gadafana! Gadafana! Shun!
The acting commissioner, Edwin Martin, reported to be saluted by the troops. And applaud, welcoming him in the yard. Of course, you know that there would be folks out there attending the occasion here this morning.
Present! Shoulder! Order! Standard is!
So we've seen the Prime Minister, Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, being saluted there by the troops. Now, that in itself is a first for this particular area.
Yes.
It's the first time he's taking that salute. Remember, we had elections up in March 13th, and this is the first sitting of the 10th Parliament. So, you know, it is indeed a historical day here in Grenada. The fact that we're in a new building, the fact that it is the first sitting for this particular term of the government coming into office with a 15 slate in March, Andre. So I'm very pleased to see the turnout. As you look on the, there is quite a contingent of folks gathering that we can see from here. I've mentioned before there are a number of areas out there where folks can sit and look at the big screen and so on. A lot of people speak to the fact that the Parliament building does not hold as much as a trade center. But Andre, if we step back a little bit and understand what, and if I may say, the Prime Minister has just entered the House and has taken his seat. Andre, the process that, as you would see, he has a portfolio with him. Are you aware what that is, the portfolio?
Would it be a copy of the throne speech that he presents to
the GG to read.
Come on, Joe.
Yeah, bright fellow.
Come on. Look at it this way. Look at it this way. Hold on. You look at it this way. Feel proud. You taught him well.
Well, you've been quizzing me, you know, so I have to remember to quiz you every once in a while. And I must say, forgive me, I know this is an official broadcast, but our Prime Minister is looking rather dapper this morning.
Well, is there an occasion when he doesn't look it?
Well, I like to mention the fact that he's just looking dapper, you know. Whether he has done it 1,000,001 times before. You know, they say it is easy for you, and he's given us a little signal there, Andre.
Yes.
It's easy for you to look dapper once, but it's difficult for you to look dapper on the 100th occasion.
So what are you saying about me? Am I not looking dapper this morning? You look splendid yourself, ain't it, Sharma? Come on, I want him to take a shot. Take a shot at Sharma.
No
Let's show
comment.
Sharma. Ah, there you
No.
are. Just look at you, girl.
No comment, no comment. What we're seeing, the folks rising, and it's an indication that the
speaker and the president of the Senate
entering the House, and there we have the President of the Senate, followed by the Speaker, and the clerk. And Andre, what I've been told as they're entering the House, the chairs that you see that they will be sitting on actually were saved from the original Parliament. So they are precious gifts. And here we have the mace. Do you say maces or mace?
Mace.
There are two of them.
Mace.
You know, the English language is a hell of a thing.
It's a hell of a thing, but I'm convinced it has
so
to be mace.
So when you do nutmeg,
it's nutmeg and mace.
Not maces. So you
Not
could say
maces.
nutmegs, but not maces.
Not maces.
The English language. Let's go to the outside. Gigi is here.
Shoulder!
And there, the Governor General will continue to inspect the troops on the outside, and then move into the inner room. There she is.
Still outside, and
Go.
Whereas by proclamation dated 14th day of November 2018, issued under the subsection 1 of section 52 of the Constitution of Grenada, Parliament was prorogued on the 15th day of November 2018. And whereas it is provided by subsection 1 of section 51 of the Constitution of Grenada that each session of Parliament shall be held at such time, at such place within Grenada, and shall commence at such time as the Governor General may by proclamation appoint. And whereas it is further provided by subsection 2 of section 51 of the Constitution of Grenada that there shall be a session of Parliament once at least in every year, so that a period of 6 months shall not intervene between the last sitting of Parliament in one session and the first sitting in the next session. Now, therefore, the Governor General, Dame Cecile La Grenade, Grand Cross of the Most Distinguished Order of St. Michael and St. George, Governor General in and over Grenada, do hereby appoint the Parliament building at Mount Weldale in the town of St. George as the place where the second session of the 10th Parliament shall be held at 10 o'clock in the forenoon on Monday, the 19th day of November 2018, as the time at which the said session shall begin. And members of the said Parliament and all other Her Majesty's officers and loving subjects in Grenada, and all others whom it may concern, are hereby required to take due notice of hereof and give their ready obedience accordingly. Given under my hand and the public seal of Grenada, this 15th day of November 2018, in the 66th year of the reign of Her Majesty the Queen, Elizabeth II, God save the Queen.
wisely deliberate for the good of the country and for the glory of thy holy name. Please join me as we say together the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, our trespasses, as we forgive who trespass. Temptation. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Honorable members, all, where be seated.
Okay, folks, we have just noticed the Governor General being escorted to the inner room. She should appear in the House momentarily. Both mace have been placed in their positions, one to the House of Representatives and the other to the Senate. It means that the session is in motion as we speak, and just a reminder, we're coming to you live from the Parliament building, Parliament House, with the ceremonial state opening of the second session of the 10th Parliament of Grenada. Already we are seeing a number of things taking place. The leader of the Senate, the President of the Senate, and the leader of the House have already entered. We also have in our presence as we speak the Honorable Prime Minister. The Governor General has already taken her salute, Andre, on the outside from the troops, and has entered the inner room.
What has happened to Sherman is that the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House, they've entered, they've made their official entrance, and now they've gone to the inner chamber so as to escort the Governor General in. Is that what's going to happen?
Well, basically, yes. They will be back. The prayers have been said in the House, which you would have heard, listeners would have heard, taking place before this. And the procession will enter the chamber in the order of the Governor General's ADC, followed by the Governor General, the Governor General's Lady-in-Waiting, and the Acting Commissioner of Police. And then, of course, the proceedings continue. She goes up to the what is called the throne area, and the Governor General will then, after a bit of ceremonial proceedings, will receive the speech from the Prime Minister. And of course, we'll take you through the process as it happens here at the Parliament House. Andre, it is quite a morning. We must say, give thanks for the weather that we've had so far. We know that November is a very rainy month, and folks were a little bit concerned what would happen when we came for a practice session Friday. What would happen if it rained, and the contingency plan as it relates to the parade. Fortunately for us this morning, it's quite a sunny day.
Brilliant sunshine.
And everything has been off to a start and really well so far. So, you know, sometimes you have to give a little thanks and praise for a little good weather in between all the rain that we've been having. Once again, we want to welcome you wherever you are in the diaspora. You can send a friend message out, tell them it's GIS Live, and we are at Parliament House today.
And Shema, one of the things I think we need to not lament but continue to promote here is throne speech. What is a throne speech in a nutshell?
I think you're very questioning today, this morning, Andre. Yes. Well, you know, the throne speech would summarize things to come in the budget for the following year. So the Governor General will speak to a number of achievements, and we see some. Okay, so here we have the President of the Senate re-entering, followed by the Speaker of the House and his contingent of the Clerk of Parliament, and that's a signal that just a matter of time before Dame Cecile will enter the House here to greet the folks who are here seated. Quite a nice turnout, Andre. The House would have catered for a contingent of people. As you know, in the past, Andre, I don't know if you ever entered the Parliament as it was on York House, and the seat, I'm not sure, I'm just asking a question.
Oh my gosh, you didn't do that, did you? You didn't
and the
do
seated
that.
arrangement is usually via an invited arrangement.
Put it this way, I was there when Dr. Mitchell spoke for about a whole day.
Okay, all right.
You remember that?
Yes. I'm just trying to set the scenario. So it is never a big accommodating arrangement. However, what is good here, unlike when it was in Parliament, because in most instances, persons who would like to listen to the budget would have had to remain out in the main area, the yard area, and so on. There are certain arrangements being made in the building itself, so folks can come and witness the whole proceeding. And there are quite a number of folks sitting out there. So in spite of the fact that you may not see a crowd in here, you must understand that there is a lot of folks witnessing this particular state occasion this morning. Signal that the Governor General, Dame Cecile, is entering, and here she's taking up her position. The Acting Commissioner of Police being escorted with the Lady-in-Waiting, ADC. And the focus is on Dame Cecile this morning. Prime Minister approaching the Governor General and delivering that very important speech to her this morning. And of course, she will proceed to deliver the speech for the 10th Parliament of Grenada, the second session.
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. As our nation embarks on this second session of the 10th Parliament, we are grateful to Almighty God for his many blessings and favors showered upon us. We are indeed thankful to God for our collective achievements as a people over the past year. We are especially grateful for God's guidance over the completion of our new Parliament building, which is the ultimate symbol of our commitment to democracy, social justice, the rule of law, and good governance. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, our economy has enjoyed 5 consecutive years of robust growth over the period 2013 to 2017, and it is poised to record its 6th straight year of economic expansion in 2018. At all costs, we must preserve this. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, our unemployment rate, though still too high, has consistently declined since 2013, and the employed labor force has expanded by over 5,000 workers. New businesses have opened and existing ones have expanded. Our construction workers are doing well. Our tourist vendors are thriving. Our farmers are holding their own despite challenges. Our senior citizens are benefiting from increased public assistance, and our youth are being afforded more training, scholarships, and employment opportunities. Furthermore, the rules-based fiscal responsibility law that took effect on January the 1st, 2016 is helping to strengthen fiscal discipline. As a result, my government's public finances have improved significantly and the debt burden has eased. My government is now meeting its obligations comfortably when they become due, and is also able to generate surpluses, which are being invested in our communities to help meet the needs and aspirations of our people. Indeed, the people of this, our blessed dry island state, are responsible for the positive economic results of the past 5 years and our social and economic progress as a country in general. While we celebrate our successes, we should not become contented or complacent, for we have much more to do to build our nation and to secure the bright and prosperous future that we all envisage for our beloved country. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, we must take bold actions if we are to realize the bright future that we envision, a future in which all Grenadians can reach their full potential and their dreams and hopes can become reality. We are ever mindful that the risks posed by climate change can derail our plans and rob us of the future we desire. Urgent and decisive actions are therefore required to make our environment, our people, and our economy more resilient to the increasingly grim and devastating impacts of climate change. Therefore, Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, for this session of Parliament, the focus of my government will be on 1. Building resilience, 2. Advancing social development, 3. Transforming our economy. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, these priorities are framed within the context of my government's medium-term agenda that is being prepared for the period 2019 to 2021, which will anchor a consolidated government approach to development planning and will guide my government's strategic development interventions over the medium term. Building resilience. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, by now we have all internalized the harsh truth that climate change poses the single greatest threat to human life as we know it. Grenada, like other small island states, is highly vulnerable to natural disasters and is among those countries at greatest risk to the impacts of climate change. Vivid images of the utter devastation wreaked upon some of our neighboring islands last year by Hurricanes Irma and Maria will be forever etched in our memories. On August the 1st this year, extremely heavy and prolonged rains caused massive flooding that affected many of our communities. 3 weeks later, on April the 21st, Grenada and other neighboring islands were shaken by a 7.4 magnitude earthquake. Thankfully, there was no major damage or loss of life. In September, Tropical Storm Kirk caused major flooding in Barbados and St. Lucia. In September also, and further afield, a 7.5 magnitude earthquake in Indonesia triggered a tsunami which resulted in over 1,000 deaths. Most recently, in Trinidad and Tobago, in late October, consecutive days of heavy rain caused widespread flooding, which led to the declaration of a national disaster. Those natural events brought to the fore, once again, the daunting reality that climate change is real and its impact intensifying. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, the experts have warned that more intense hurricanes, heavier rainfall, hotter spells, and rising sea levels are expected for the Caribbean region. So how do we respond to climate change? Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, my government's newly created Ministry of Climate Resilience, Environment, Forestry, Fisheries, Disaster Management and Information will be intensifying its efforts in spearheading all activities aimed at making Grenada a climate-resilient country. This will include formulating and executing strategic policies and programs that are geared toward protecting our oceanic, marine, coastal, and land environments, improving drainage, and strengthening our disaster preparedness and management systems, among other policies. Building a more resilient nation will ensure that families, communities, businesses, and the government can better prepare, manage, and recover faster from extreme climate-related events. The first phase of the ban on styrofoam products is the outcome of collective action towards the promotion of environmental sustainability and the attainment of the resilient nation we aim to be. My government's climate resilience agenda is one that is grounded in sound policy, developed through extensive national stakeholder consultation. The recently approved National Adaptation Plan and National Determined Contributions identify Grenada's climate change adaptation and mitigation needs. Also, my government has requested assistance from the International Monetary Fund to conduct a climate change policy assessment. This assessment would seek to examine our plans to manage climate change from the perspective of its macroeconomic implications and suggest macro-relevant reforms that could strengthen the likelihood of success. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, my government has achieved a number of early and notable successes. Through the Green Climate Fund, Grenada has secured significant grant support for a number of transformative projects and capacity building in key government institutions. These projects include: 1. Grenada Climate Resilient Water Sector. With support from the German government, Grenada secured 125 million EC dollars for a project that seeks to address the critical need to increase water collection and storage in the north of the island, with more effective distribution to the south, where demand is greatest and which is most vulnerable to water shortages. Secondly, Climate Resilient City. This is a project funded by the Green Climate Fund in technical partnership with New York University. The goal is to make the town of St. George the first climate resilient city in the Caribbean. The town of Grenville will also benefit from this project. The intention is for the two towns to be sufficiently transformed to be able to withstand future economic, environmental, social, and institutional shocks exacerbated by climate change. Challenges such as flooding, sewage wastewater management, coastal erosion, land degradation, public utility hazards, and vehicular congestion are expected to be addressed. The potential value of these projects is estimated at 350 million EC dollars. Thirdly, the Green Climate Fund, enhanced direct access. Grenada, Antigua and Barbuda, and Dominica have secured funding to the value of 54 million EC dollars, which will provide grant support and a soft loan facility for community, private sector, and government-based climate resilience initiatives. Support for low-income homeowners to make their homes more resilient to climate change will also be included. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, my government will step up its efforts at climate screening all public investment projects to ensure that new physical infrastructure is climate and disaster resilient. This will ensure that public infrastructure is built to withstand major hurricanes, heavy rains, and floods. My government will also push ahead with its plans to improve Grenada's energy security and diversify our energy mix through the use of renewable energy. Presently, work is ongoing on Grenada's geothermal development. To date, over $2 million US have been provided in financial and technical assistance by the governments of New Zealand and Japan to assist in investigating Grenada's geothermal potential for electricity production. Through the Sustainable Energy for the Eastern Caribbean program, economically viable investments will be made in renewable energy and energy efficiency to reduce our dependency on imported fossil fuels. To date, energy audits have been completed for 14 public buildings, and the search for a project manager has commenced for the investment phase of this initiative. Another ongoing initiative is the Japan-Caribbean Climate Change Partnership, which is aimed at supporting Grenada's advanced to inclusive, low-emission, risk-resilient development. This will be achieved by improving our energy security and integrating medium to long-term planning for adaptation to climate change. The partnership provided funding and is supporting the implementation of 8 climate change adaptation pilots in the area of climate-smart agriculture, water resource management, climate-smart resilient infrastructure, and renewable energy. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, through the important work of the Ministry of Agriculture and Lands, as well as the recently launched Climate Smart Agriculture and Rural Enterprise Program, CEAP, my government will continue to support and promote climate-smart agricultural practices. CEAP's project objectives are to provide training and financial support to farmers to implement climate-smart agriculture and irrigation practices. The training that farmers will receive is expected to go a long way in building the resilience of our agriculture sector. The program is financed by the International Fund for Agricultural Development, the Caribbean Development Bank, and the Government of Grenada to the tune of $14 million. The Ministry of Agriculture and Lands is also working collaboratively with the Food and Agriculture Organization, the Munich Climate Insurance Initiative, and the Caribbean Catastrophic Risk Insurance Facility to develop and provide risk management tools to help vulnerable people. In recent times, with the effects of climate change and the increasing pressures of invasive alien species, the sector has become much more vulnerable. Adequate insurance coverage will be crucial in safeguarding livelihoods and providing a high degree of comfort and security to those involved in agri-food sector. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, my government will continue to address the issues of youth unemployment and an aging population within the agricultural sector by fully implementing the Youth in Agriculture project. Technical and material assistance will be provided to young persons with the interest and aptitude to pursue agribusiness enterprises. This initiative will contribute to greater sustainability in the agricultural sector. Another important project is the pilot land bank project, which seeks to provide persons with access to good, fertile, and arable idle lands for agricultural production. My government has already allocated over 100 acres of lands at Diamond St. Mark and Grand Bacolet St. Andrew. This project is funded by the Food and Agricultural Organization and seeks to manage our arable lands in a more prudent and climate-smart manner. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, my government will continue to make climate change information available and mainstreamed into its decision and policy-making processes. It will also continue raising environmental awareness in our communities, our schools, our churches, our workplaces, and the wider society. Indeed, the protection of our environment and the building of resilience is everyone's business, not just the business of my government. In this regard, the private sector, including the financial sector, must also play its part in promoting an environmentally conscious and climate-resilient Grenada. Financial lending institutions can channel resources to sectors and industries that can help to promote climate resilience and energy efficiency. They are therefore well placed to support climate change adaptation and mitigation, and by extension, promote environmental sustainability. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, my government acknowledges that delivering on its resilience agenda calls for working with strategic partners. In June this year, the World Bank approved a loan of $30 million that would allow my government to advance the implementation of its climate adaptation and mitigation strategy, which will entail measures geared at protecting our natural resource and coastal and marine ecosystems, reducing hazards and disaster risks, and improving physical planning, among other strategic measures. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, through the Prime Minister, who in September this year assumed the presidency of the Fourth Assembly of the Small Island Developing States Sustainable Energy and Climate Resilience Organization, SIDSDOC, Grenada will continue to lobby international partners for concessional financing to help build resilience in small states around the world. Furthermore, we will continue to impress upon the international community to consider the Caribbean's inherent vulnerabilities when designing policies to graduate small island states from accessing official development assistance. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, building resilience and reducing vulnerabilities go hand in hand. They are indeed the two defining issues of our time and must be placed high on the national development agenda if the gains achieved in recent years are to be maintained. Advancing social development. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, advancing social development will require my government to focus on bolstering our resilience as a people and building stronger communities. As Grenadians, we are, by our very nature, a nation of determined and resilient people. Although our history has been replete with challenges, it is also a history of courage and triumph. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, as we inch closer to our 50th year as an independent nation, we must redouble our efforts to ensure that as a people, we are more fortified to confront challenges head-on. Our social advancement must be fueled by our collective strength and resolve to succeed. Therefore, my government will give more prominence to building social resilience by expanding the reach and enhancing the impact of its social policies and programs. In this regard, greater emphasis will be placed on providing adequate psychosocial support systems to help individuals and communities cope better in the event of natural disasters. More focus will also be given to protecting and empowering vulnerable and at-risk households and communities. This will be done by systematic and strategic targeting of social protection and safety net programs so that the neediest benefit the most. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, the provision of affordable, climate-resilient housing infrastructure should also feature prominently on my government's agenda to advance social development. In this regard, the Ministry of Social Development and Housing will continue work already started by the housing work brigades established throughout the length and breadth of the country, responsible for repairing, constructing, and rebuilding houses for vulnerable citizens. Work will also continue under the Chinese Low-Income Housing Project in the parishes of St. Mark, St. David, St. Patrick, St. George, and Carriacou. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, advancing social development would also require the mainstreaming of gender equality and social inclusion issues in decision and policy making, to which my government is firmly committed. My government has launched a special victims unit and a hotline to deal specifically with sexual crimes, domestic violence, and child abuse. We will continue to render services to victims of gender-based violence, deliver and facilitate parenting education support, both independently and collaboratively. Indeed, the establishment of the Special Victims Unit and Hotline are crucial steps in our quest to rid our society of the scourge of abuse in all of its despicable forms. We will also continue work to finalize our juvenile justice policy and strategic plan, and continue the work of the National Committee for the Prevention of Child Sexual Abuse. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, advancing social development would also require us to make greater strides in the areas of education and health. Accordingly, the Ministry of Education will give greater priority to the development of skills as a major contributor to economic growth, development, and employment in Grenada. Already, a National Skills Development Institute has been established in Snell Hall in St. Patrick and will begin operations soon. A partnership has also been established with the New Life organization, NULO, for the delivery of 13 certified skills programs targeted at young adults 25 years and older. The Ministry of Education intends to establish at least 2 new skills centers in 2019. My government will continue to provide higher education opportunities for its citizens. A total of 173 scholarships valued at 48.5 million EC dollars were awarded for higher education in 2018. This included economic cost and bursaries to the University of the West Indies. Additionally, Ireland scholarships funded by the Government of Grenada amounted to 2.3 million EC dollars. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, in relation to health, the Ministry is fully committed to improving the quality of health care for all segments of the population. As a first step, ongoing efforts to regularize staff within the health sector would address the human resource constraint as well as provide a clear framework for succession planning. A human resource health policy and plan has been approved and implemented, will begin in 2019. My government is also committed to developing and improving the health infrastructure with an aim at institutionalizing climate-resilient technologies in the health sector, planning and operations. In this regard, my government in October completed and commissioned the retrofitting of Princess Alice Hospital, which is now recognized as a smart healthcare facility. The Grove Polyclinic is also expected to be completed in 2019, a model health facility for the delivery of primary healthcare services to the residents of St. John and surrounding parishes. As my government seeks to enhance services in the health sector, it is the fundamental philosophy that one's access to care should be guaranteed regardless of one's ability to pay. As such, health financing and national health insurance, NHI, remain a priority of my government. The Health Economics Unit of UWI has been contracted to provide technical assistance to the NHI Secretariat in developing the framework for an NHI program in Grenada. To date, a number of deliverables have been received, including the proposal for the basket of services, a macroeconomic analysis of the fiscal space for financing of NHI, and a governance framework that has been approved by Cabinet. My government now awaits the submission of the proposal for the legal framework to guide implementation of the National Health Insurance. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, my government also remains firmly committed to pension reform. Indeed, ensuring that our retirees are provided with a decent pension so that they can have a comfortable standard of living in their twilight years is not just a social imperative, but a moral duty, which my government takes seriously. To meet this commitment, my government has established a pension secretariat and has secured the services of a company to conduct an actuarial study to assist in designing an appropriate package based on Grenada's particular financial situation. My government has already taken action to support public officers who were appointed between April the 4th, 1983 and February the 22nd, 1985, on the basis of the Hermelin-Armstrong judgment. Despite the current impasse in negotiations with public sector trade unions and staff associations, my government is committed to achieving pension reform which will benefit workers in the post-1985 category. We must balance this commitment with ensuring that decisions taken do not have negative effects on future generations, but are done within the parameters of the Fiscal Responsibility Law. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, my government's people-centered approach to development recognizes that Grenada's economic advancement requires a healthy, educated, conscious, productive, and purposeful citizenry. There can certainly be no economic production and, by extension, transformation without a productive people. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, I turn now to the third and final priority area of my government, transforming our economy. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, our country has had its share of economic ups and downs since independence. In retrospect, however, our economic story has been an encouraging one. Economic growth has been positive in 29 of the past 38 years. In the past 5 years especially, economic growth has been robust. Our homegrown structural adjustment program delivered significant results. Indeed, macroeconomic stability has been restored. Our public finances have improved and continue to do so, and our public financial management and accountability systems have been strengthened. Our signature fiscal responsibility law has ushered in a new fiscal era, one where strong fiscal discipline has become the norm and where the management of public finances is systematically monitored and reported to the Parliament by an independent fiscal responsibility oversight committee. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, last month, our Prime Minister and Minister of Finance received a prestigious award at the annual meetings of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank in Bali, Indonesia, Finance Minister of the Year for the Caribbean region. This award is a testament of the bold and decisive policies taken under the stewardship of our Prime Minister and Minister for Finance to correct our economic challenges. It is also a testament of the hard work and dedication of the staff of the Ministry of Finance, and is also a testament of the collective resolve and shared sacrifices of our people. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, my government has cemented a solid economic foundation through the bold policies and tough reforms it implemented in the past 5 years. In so doing, it has positioned the country well for economic takeoff and transformation. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, my government is mindful that transforming our economy is one that is more dynamic, diversified, competitive, innovative, and prosperous will not happen overnight. Economic transformation is a long-term affair, but with the right foundation in place, the process towards its attainment can be better accomplished. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, an immediate priority of my government will be the diligent pursuit of projects that have the potential to contribute to Grenada's economic transformation in the long term. My government has already identified 4 such projects, details of which will be provided when the 2019 budget is presented. A transformational projects committee with representatives from the public and private sectors has already been established, and one of its responsibilities is to develop a detailed plan of action to move the projects from the stage of ideas to implementation. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, youth must be at the center of our economic transformation agenda. Indeed, the transformation of our economy will require their ideas, innovation, creativity, and energy. My government will therefore intensify its efforts to promote opportunities for youth development and empowerment. Priority will be given to increasing vocational and other training and skills development that are relevant for the 21st century youth. My government will increase its efforts to improve the enabling environment provided to support the creation of youth enterprises and cooperatives to enable them to take advantage of emerging business opportunities, especially in the export markets. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, greater emphasis will also be placed on making more effective use of the advances in technology. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, there is no reason why the next big global app or invention cannot be developed by young Grenadians. This is the future that my government envisions and will be working intentionally towards making this a reality. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, transforming our economy will also require significant reductions in the cost of doing business, as well as a fundamental overhaul of the manner in which business is conducted. My government will therefore push ahead with reforms to cut energy costs with a view to lowering the overall cost of doing business. In this regard, promoting the use of renewable energy remains a key priority. My government will also accelerate ongoing reforms of the Customs and Excise Division to improve trade facilitation. My government will forge ahead with implementation of the National Export Strategy, the NES, 2017 to 2021, which identifies priority sectors for export trade expansion and other key strategic framework documents that will provide the main platforms for informing necessary interventions. We simply cannot conduct business in the 21st century using 20th century processes, systems, and technology. Of necessity, therefore, business re-engineering, both in the public and private sectors, must take place. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, with respect to the public sector, my government will move aggressively to implement reforms to modernize procedures and business processes, as well as mainstream the use of up-to-date technology with a view to cutting red tape and improving the interface between government and businesses. The proposed Digital Governance for Resilience project will help to build a smart, resilient government that adopts a whole-of-government approach to implementing critical public policies and services. An essential deliverable of this project will be the digitization of key public services. My government will also continue to expose public servants to customer service and other training, as well as personal and professional development opportunities to enable them to improve the quality of their work and, by extension, the quality of service provided to the public. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, achieving service excellence in the public service should not be ad hoc or a surprise. It should be the norm. A new mantra will be quality public servants for quality service to the public. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, my government will continue to support the development of new areas of economic activity such as 1, the blue economy to unlock the economic benefits of our ocean. 2, the green economy to fully exploit the benefits of renewable energy. Thirdly, the orange economy to leverage our rich culture, heritage, arts, and creativity for maximum economic benefits. And 4th, the silver economy to exploit our oil and gas resources, which can be an economic game changer for this country. Through these new areas of economic activities, pathways will be created to increase jobs and wealth for our people. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, my government will also continue to give focus to the traditional sectors such as agriculture, tourism, and manufacturing through concerted and strategic actions to make them more competitive, productive, innovative, profitable, relevant to the 21st century, and agile enough to adapt to changing technologies and the demands of customers locally, regionally, and internationally. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, crucial success factors to support our process towards economic transformation and the maintenance of strong institutions, good governance, respect for the rule of law, and the promotion of human dignity. My government remains firmly committed to these principles. Accordingly, collective actions and the continued support of the social partnership are also crucial to realizing our aspirations for economic transformation, wealth creation, and inclusive prosperity. Conclusion. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, my government has set out its overarching strategic priorities for this session of the 10th Parliament. Specific details will be elaborated when the 2019 budget is presented. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, we look to our future with hope, optimism, and confidence, secure in the knowledge that we as Grenadians are well able and capable of realizing the bright and prosperous future that we all envisage with bold and collective action. We must continue to work together to be steadfast and resolute in addressing our development priorities. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, may God guide you in all your deliberations and render you equal to the sacred trusts bestowed upon you. And may God continue to hold our beloved nation in the palm of his hands and shower us with unprecedented favors and blessings. May his will be done.
Well, listeners all, you've just been privy to the throne speech as delivered by Her Excellency Dame Cecile here this morning on the second session of the 10th Parliament here in Grenada. A number of key things were brought to the fore this morning, Andre, and we did have a little difficulty with getting the hearing going, the audio, but nevertheless, just to reflect a little bit, as we see in the House.
Mr. President,
Let's join the Prime Minister.
I stand to move the following motion in my name. Be it resolved that the Honourable Houses of Parliament record their thanks for the gracious address delivered today to the Houses by the Governor-General. And be it further resolved that debate on this address be deferred to date to be named.
Business in the Senate, seconded by Senator Christopher Dialli. Associate the Senate with the sentiment.
Mr. President,
motion.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to second the motion moved by the Prime Minister.
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, the Senate associates itself with the motion moved by the Prime Minister.
And that
Mr.
was
President,
Senator
Mr.
Garvey.
Speaker, I beg to second that motion.
And then seconded by Senator Dialli.
Yes.
Honourable members of the House of Representatives, the question is that the debate on the gracious address delivered by Her Excellency be deferred to a date to be named. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Sean, what's interesting to note here is that we saw what we believe was a mix-up there.
Question is, motion moved by Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Chief Earlier Bishop. Seconded, moved and seconded, be approved. All those who are of that opinion say aye. To the contrary view say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
Yes, Shams, as I was saying, what we thought was a mix-up there, and not having what we saw, the leader of government business had to move the motion, and seconded by Senator Dialli. Unfortunately, Senator Simon Steele is in Jamaica. He attended a function there yesterday, and therefore not here today. So Galway took his position. Yes, that's what happened.
That is clear, and hence the reason why we've probably seen a few seats. The Governor General rise, and you heard the fanfare, and they now will move into the, she leaves the chamber and enters into the antechamber, and then the procession will follow. We'll get to a few of the points that she would have made here this morning relevant to the expectations of what is to happen in 2019, which will be, of course, elaborated on the delivery of the budget speech by Prime Minister Dr. Mitchell. And what we're seeing here is that the Governor General and her entourage would have left the House. And
now be adjourned by here. Of that opinion, say aye. Contrary views, say nay. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. This House now stands.
So, Shema, we are now seeing the adjournment of both houses, and this is, Shema, one of the few occasions when both houses meet, right?
And that's correct, and one of the few occasions. And when we started out this morning, we made reference to the mace that is usually placed once the House is in sitting, and now the houses have adjourned.
Yes.
The mace has been removed, and the contingent moves to the antechamber, including the Prime Minister, the ministers of the House, both the upper house and the House of Representatives, the tete-a-tete greetings, and as per usual, a lot to discuss relevant to the speech this morning. Andrea, I know that there are going to be some other interviews taking place on the outside, we've been told, but in the meantime, some of the points that I was able to garner coming out of the Governor General's delivery this morning, she spoke about agribusiness. And you know, we often hear of us having an abundance of fruits and vegetables and so on that seem to go to waste. And this is good for us to come to terms with that particular area as significant in our development, especially, Andre, as we're seeing all the manifestation of diseases, not necessarily internationally, but right here at home with cancers, diabetes, hypertension, and so on. We are told that the healthier we can live and the healthier foods and products, the better off we be as a people. She spoke about the pilot land bank that is ongoing, and the housing from the Chinese that is being established in places like Diamond and Grand Bacolet and Carriacou and so on, over 100 units.
Patrick, which is pretty close to me.
That's going to be continuing, and that again is extremely important. Housing for a nation is crucial. You know, it is said that you provide food, clothing, and housing for your family, your children, and therefore these are important needs, not wants, but needs for any nation. The climate change, which has been spoken about on numerous occasions, we continue to move in that direction. We know of the making St. George's a climate smart city in the Caribbean. The environment and awareness, the protection of our environment, she spoke about that. She spoke about the private sector and the financial sector being all a part of the whole aspect of the fiscal planning for the nation. And you know, we cannot just ignore the importance of the private sector and the financial sector, because the private sector may not necessarily the financial sector may not necessarily be the private sector. Yes, their involvement is crucial at this time in ensuring that we move forward in the direction that we're heading. You know, the Governor General spoke about education and the importance of education. We hear about the training of our skill training, which is key. She mentioned the fact that there is one such training unit up at Snell Hall in St. Patrick.
That is to be commissioned pretty soon.
Right, and that there are some more to come. And that again is so important when you look at the world today and you look at the recognition of skilled, trained people and their prominence in the world today. You know, we talk about doctors and lawyers and so on, but skills seem to be the most or key area that drives a nation and ensure that there is employment and ensure that people have a better way of life, because it's no longer about being just doctors and lawyers and that sort of thing. Skill training is extremely important, and I'm very happy to hear about that. One of the things I notice significantly is the aspect of a juvenile justice policy, a hotline for special victims. As you know, we've had the cry out there all about sexual harassment or young children, and that is key, Andre. The other area that was very important here is that of health, and she spoke about health. She spoke about the National Health Plan, health policy, which is going to be outrolled in 2019. That is extremely important. The National Health Insurance, as it relates to that, a lot of folks are very concerned about that and when it's going to kick in. Right now, they said she's indicated that Cabinet has actually agreed and approved the framework for it, and they're now waiting on the legal framework. So that should be coming in shortly, I'm sure. She did touch on the pension reform and basically indicated that it is something that is important to the government to ensure that, and it's not just a social responsibility, she referred to it as being a moral responsibility as well. And the actual, I'm always getting tired of that, but you know, actuary, I prefer the study that has to take place. And she also referred to the Hermelin Armstrong case as it relates to 83 to 85 and how government treated that. And the fact that government sees this as a moral duty, not just only a social duty, to deal with the pension issue. And going forward, they're certainly working towards that. Government committed to reform for that whole process, and they have taken care of the 1983-85 issue and moving forward. Transforming the economy was extremely important on her list as well, and again it calls for a combination of all sectors to work for the transformation of the economy.
Shema, I don't know if you picked it up, but I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did pick it up. She spoke of 5 different projects somewhere along the line that the government...
4 projects.
4 projects.
I was just about getting to that. Yes.
What do you think those are? Because she didn't elaborate at all on it.
But before I get to answer that question from you, Andre, just let me just mention the fact that the award that the Prime Minister would have received for the Prime Minister or Finance Minister award
for this part of the world,
right?
The Caribbean.
And she said that could only happen because of how the finances of the nation has been treated. She made reference to the shared sacrifices of the nation, the hard work of the Ministry of Finance, and the bold moves that were taken as it relates to policies and tax reform and so on, that would have placed us in that enviable position to be recognized, and the Prime Minister being recognized for that as well. We are about to be on an economic takeoff. Transformation is very much there. There are projects coming, 4 projects being mentioned. Projects. You ask what they are. I cannot tell you what they are this time. She said that we'll have to wait for the budget to definitely find out what they are. The private and public sector called upon to be part of that whole transformation committee that is going to be established. And, you know, conducting business, moving in a positive direction, cutting energy costs, looking at the possibilities for renewable energy, reforming of the Customs and Excise Department, you know, the updating of technology within the entire government system, digitalizing the government system, you know. So I am very heartened, I'm very pleased to have had the opportunity to hear some of the things being delivered here this morning, in spite of the fact that we had a little hitch with the audio.
Yeah.
But certainly a lot is expected for the budget to come.
What is to happen also, Sherman? I think that this points directly to our young people hearing about digitalizing the whole system of government. It speaks to computers, IT, it speaks to IT immediately, and that should be telling our young people, hey, this is the way for me to go now, this is what I need to get involved in, because there are going to be opportunities here for me. And Shoma, those 4 projects, I'm telling you that this is what everyone will be waiting for. What, come Wednesday?
Wednesday will be the budget.
Wednesday. Everyone is going to be waiting for this. What are these 4 mystery projects that they're speaking of that is going to happen, and gives one the impression that this seeks to transform or bring a certain oomph, if you call it that, into the Grenadian social life.
Well, we must understand that a lot of young people, and not only young, but our age group and so on, we have what you would consider as the informal know-how to technology. And this will bring a more formal approach, a more training as to the do's and don'ts and the hows and how have you and what have you. And we must take this seriously, because we cannot get left in the world. We cannot allow others to lead us in the Caribbean. We must be the leaders. And the transformation is important. Well, of course,
we've always been.
The transformation is important, and technology is the way to go. There is absolutely no choice but to go into technology.
And to prove that we've always been, students who are listening and young people and other people who are listening, just remember that when Barbados was no longer leading the Windward Islands, when they decided that Barbados would go on its own and have its own Governor General, Grenada was the base. WIBS was the base.
We would have to hold back on that discussion, Andre, because there's so much that we can talk about there, the training ground and all of that. But nevertheless, we see that folks are very much gathering on the outside and having a little chat with each other. You know, this is a very important day for us here in Grenada. We're sitting at a beautiful spot on above what was the old Governor General's residence, which should be getting restored pretty soon. And you know, it gives me a sense of pride to listen to my Governor General here this morning delivering that speech for the first time here at this particular location, and giving us a lot of promise for the future in 2019. My anticipation is for a fantabulous budget coming from Dr. Mitchell as the Minister of Finance on Wednesday, and I do believe that Grenadians will be more than pleased with what they hear to come in the future.
Well, most definitely, Grenadians would be pleased. And as you see, Shoma, I don't know if our cameraman will be able to take this shot down there in the chamber.
They're getting ready for the
official picture.
That's right.
Which will mark the first sitting of the 10th Parliament.
Yes.
It's a pity we're not able to get that shot in. It would have been great for us to get that shot in. So,
well, I'm not sure if the camera is still.
There we are, Shoma. There we are.
It's the second session, actually, Andre, of the 10th Parliament, and I think it would, if we could get maybe a close-up, it would be a nice way to bid you farewell here from the Parliament building at Mount Weldale. Folks, we want to thank you for being a wonderful audience wherever you are, and we want to shout out our dear friends in Washington. It's a pleasure having you on board with us this morning. I fully support your comment.
Please.
We look forward to joining you on Wednesday when it will be Budget Day in Grenada. On behalf of the entire team here this morning and my co-host Andre Donald, I'm Shirma Wells. Have a wonderful day.
Government reiterates commitment to pension reform. Details to this story and more in the National Report. With the details to the news from Monday, November 19th, I'm Delroy Louison. The government of Grenada says despite the current impasse in negotiations with public sector trade unions and staff associations, it remains fully committed to pension reform, which will benefit workers in the post-1985 category. Delivering the throne speech during the ceremonial state opening of the second session of the 10th Parliament, Governor-General Her Excellency Dame Cecile La Grenade said her government takes seriously its moral duty to ensure that retirees are provided with a decent pension for a comfortable standard of living. Government had already taken action to support 56 public officers who were appointed between April 4, 1983 and February 22, 1985, on the basis of the Hamlin-Armstrong judgment. That was done at a cost of $7.7 million.
We must balance this commitment with ensuring that decisions taken do not have negative effects on future generations, but are done within the parameters of the Fiscal Responsibility Law.
Grenada will use its presidency for the 4th Assembly of Small Island Developing States Sustainable Energy and Climate Resilience Organization, SIDS-DOC, to continue lobbying international partners for concessional financing. Governor-General Dame Cecile La Grenade says the aim is to help build resilience in small states worldwide.
Furthermore, we will continue to impress upon the international community to consider the Caribbean's inherent vulnerabilities when designing policies to graduate small island states from accessing official development assistance. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, building resilience and reducing vulnerabilities go hand in hand. They are indeed the two defining issues of our time and must be placed high on the national development agenda if the gains achieved in recent years are to be maintained.
The throne speech is a precursor to the 2019 estimates of revenue and expenditure, which will be delivered by Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, on Wednesday. Dr. Mitchell told the Government Information Service that the throne speech has set the tone for what is to be presented this week.
Capturing the main theme of even the budget that is to come on Wednesday. It is a resilience of all form, climate, economic, infrastructure, financial resilience, and clearly economic transformation and of course going at improvement on the public service using technology as a way forward, all aspects of economic transformation in the country as a whole. So it was a throne speech, which of course precedes the budget presentation, which comes on Wednesday, which outline the specific areas of intervention. This is just a broad outline, which is what the throne speech is supposed to be.
Dr. Mitchell says while the throne speech dealt with the plans of his government in a broad spectrum, his task will be to deal with the specifics with regard to his government's plans and policies.
The specifics and all the interventions that they